Stay tuned and we'll tell you everything you need to know about adopting a dog, from what kind of breed is right for you to the issues that might make you reconsider your decision. This is Getting a Dog, what you need to know. Welcome to Getting a Dog, what you need to know. I'm your host, Robert McLaughlin. I'm the owner of HD Dog Training. In our first segment, we're going to look at our differences among dog breeds and how a dog breed you have a difference with your dog breed with your lifestyle. Here to help me with this information is David Owens, a certified canine trainer. David is nationally renowned for winning competitive sports with high-end protection dogs at the highest of levels. So David, tell me what you need to know about getting a dog.
Well, first you should look at your lifestyle and what you do and what the dog's going to be doing with you before you determine what breed of dog you want. So there are a whole lot of breeds out there, from your little tiny Chihuahuas to your great big Mastiffs, and you need to take in consideration, does the dog need a lot of exercise? Is the dog a couch potato? Are you a couch potato? Do you have time to spend with the dog? Do you have a bunch of little ones and you don't have the time for the dog? Then maybe you shouldn't. Or if you're going to be busy at work all the time, and you can't take the dog out, well, you can do other things about that, but you have to look at your lifestyle.
Okay. So would you say maybe, a Belgian Malinois is not the perfect dog for an 800 square foot apartment in Philadelphia? Is that?
I'm glad you went there, but I don't think a Belgian Malinois is a good dog for a bunch of different homes because of the activity level and the natural tendencies of the dog to, one, be aggressive. They're extremely smart, and I'm sure there are people who will totally disagree with me and say, my Belgian Malinois is this or that. But I'm talking about a general rule. Your German Shepherd, for instance, is an excellent dog for a lot of people. It's a what I call a soldier. It does what you want it to do. It needs training, but every dog needs training, and it should have a certain amount of activity. But you can live in the suburbs or the country or rural, or if you're an active person that lives in an apartment, you could still get away with a German Shepherd. Or you may want something smaller. You can go with what's smaller? A Chihuahua. But let's say if we go something tiny like a Chihuahua or any of the dogs you can get from your rescues, right? You would still have to look at the energy level of the dog, right? If you get a Beagle, a lot of people think Beagles are going to just lay there, but Beagles are food crazy dogs. So when you leave something out on your counter, they're going to go after it, and they're going to eat it. Or Jack Russell, which is an extremely energetic dog. So you may have the dog that fits in your apartment, but that dog may be running around your walls. So that is something to consider.
Okay, so you're saying basically a Belgian Malinois is more reactive than a German Shepherd, or more aggressive than a German Shepherd. What is the difference between reactivity and aggression then?
Well, I'm saying that the Belgian Malinois does not make a good house pet unless the dog has a job.
Okay.
I'm not saying anything about reactivity or aggression or any of those natures for the dog.
All right.
I'm saying it doesn't make a good house pet. But you have a whole bunch of German Shepherds who weren't bred for the work, who are bred more for shows, who don't have so much energy as your Malinois would have, and that would make a better house pet for a dog. Granted, there are plenty of German Shepherds who are bred for the work and make excellent working dogs like the Malinois or the Doberman or the Rottweiler, these working line dogs. But I would suggest that if someone's looking for a house pet, that they not look at the Malinois.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying there.
That's good to know.
Right.
So how do we feel about dog parks in general for people who are in the city?
Well, I don't know how you feel about dog parks. I don't like dog parks because
I'm not a fan.
People don't pay attention to their dogs. Most of the dogs there aren't trained. If you want to take your dog out and take your dog for a walk, right? And go, and your dog should be able to walk past other dogs. It doesn't have to jump on other dogs or play tug of war with other dogs. Now, I'm sure there are some people who say, my dog loves the dog park and has a great time there, and et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, I've seen problems coming from dogs' behavior after going to dog parks all the time. They want to pull to go meet a dog.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe that dog shouldn't be met, and maybe that dog doesn't like other dogs. And people will go, well, my dog's friendly. That dog isn't friendly. So
Everlasting
dog,
conundrum.
right? So dog parks are not the best place to socialize your dog. Socialize your dog by taking them out, walking past people, walking past dogs, visiting people, and doing it with a little bit of common sense.
Okay. So one of the things I always tell people is, dog parks are great for human socialization, as in, we get out and we say what we want to do
Right.
with our dogs. We get them out by literally just getting our dogs to a place, and then we pick up our phones because the world's becoming a little more antisocial these days, or so it seems. It's becoming more technologically advanced, and people are going that route. I've noticed, a lot of humping, jumping, biting, stuff like that is usually what occurs during dog parks, and then you have, like you said, all the issues which trickle off after that. So, completely agree. Let's see. So, how do you feel about, veterinarian visits for certain dogs? When dictates a veterinarian visit? I think a lot of people aren't really sure. Maybe some people take their dog too much.
Well, I mean, when you get your dog, you should take them, no matter how old your dog, no matter where you get your dog from, you should take your dogs to the vet, have your vet go over your dog, make sure your dog's healthy, make sure your dog is up to date on shots. That's going to be more of a personal issue, which shots. Like, there are some people who want to get their dog, let's say Bordetella or a kennel cough, right? And maybe required if you're going away and your dog's staying at a kennel or some other sort of facility. And there are people who, well, my dog's never going to be in that area and I don't want it. So there are things to discuss with your vet. How often you go to the vet? Well, if you have a little puppy, you're going to need to go to the vet several times that year for the follow-up shots. If you have an adult dog, you're probably going to end up going once a year. And as the dog gets older, you may go less unless you run into some unfortunate problems, just like human beings. Babies go to doctor often. As we get older, hopefully we don't go to the doctor so often, but it could happen that way.
Okay, so I guess that's a perfect segue into the next question. I think we're running out of time here a little bit here, but how do you feel about dog kennels per se, or boarding facilities? Open kennels versus crated kennels where dogs are kept separate?
Personally, I preferred my dogs kept separate. I prefer all dogs to be kept separate. I don't want my dog interacting with dogs I don't know, or they don't know. I don't want someone to give my dog a temperament test saying he gets along with other dogs, so he should be with other dogs. And that goes back to the same thing as a dog park, where the dogs are running around and they're calling it socialization. I don't need my dog to be part of a pack because they're part of my pack. So I go to kennels that have separate kennels. There are people who will totally disagree with me, and that's why there's chocolate and vanilla, right? So you can have whatever you want. But my feeling is I keep them separated.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll discuss what you need in order to give a dog a good home. Welcome back to Getting a Dog, what you need to know. I'm your host, certified canine trainer Robert McLaughlin. Joining me is David Owens, another certified dog trainer. In this segment, we're going to look at what you need to provide a dog in order to give it a good home and a good life. So, David, what does it take to give a dog a good home and a good life?
Well, same thing for people. Proper nutrition, proper exercise, and that includes your brain and your body.
Okay.
Shelter, right? Those are your basics. Now, the rest of it is going to depend on what dog you now have, right? So, let's say you have one of the larger, slower mastiffs. Let's say you have an English mastiff. We'll pick one of them. They're big dogs. They tend to be very friendly dogs. They tend to be very strong dogs, but they take a lot of room, right? So, for that particular dog, you're going to need to go on walks, but you probably don't need to go for a run with them. The English Mastiffs that I've met, they don't want to really run that far, right? So go for it. But you may also get yourself a Border Collie. Now you might want to go out and get yourself a ball launcher or something else to throw balls, or you may have a good arm where you can throw balls all day for your Border Collie, right? So that's the exercise for those dogs. They're all going to need the same medical care. You go to the doctor and you take a look at that, but in some breeds have different things to look for. Hip dysplasia or problems with their stomachs or problems breeding, depending on your breed. So you have to talk to your vet about that, and they'll make sure all is for you.
Okay. So I guess one of the biggest questions I think I usually get as a trainer, I don't know about you, is physical activity versus mental activity. Like a lot of people I feel like think that, you know, I got the dog out today, that counts, but the dog still wants more. What I've noticed through training, you know, some odd years that I've been doing it versus you, is, you know, the dogs need to be trained, and sometimes the mental stimulation can wear them out more so than physical activity.
Absolutely. So there are sports people can get involved in. There's nose work is an up and coming sport that's they have a lot of places around here that you can train nose work.
What is
agility? Nose work is where the dog uses his nose, finds a scent that's been hidden somewhere, and you have a time limit to find that particular scent. A lot of people do it just for fun. A lot of people you can hide hot dogs in your home if you want to do that. Cut up little pieces of hot dog and teach your dog to do that. You can do an agility course. It doesn't have to be an agility course that's professional. You can have an agility course in your backyard if you have a backyard. If you have one of these small breeds, like a Pomeranian, that means you can have agility course in your living room.
Couch.
Right.
Couch tables, if you don't mind the tables.
Exactly. So, but also having a dog think, teaching a dog to touch something, teaching a dog to find something, teaching a dog to actually figure out something is very important. Not just running or, you know, chasing squirrels and deer all day.
Okay. So I guess with that said, you know, you're just making these perfect segues for me. It's so easy. So squirrels are obviously an issue for a lot of people. I think sometimes people allow their dog to engage in that behavior, and then they'll, you know, in the future they'll get mad after this habit has been formed of the dog, you know, oh, go ahead and chase them when they're younger, and they get older and stronger, and now they're pulling people down the street and they're mad about it. So, you know, as a balanced trainer versus a positive trainer, it almost like takes a positive trainer to work with puppies, I feel like, and kind of get like a really good established basis of training, which again, I use positive training quite often as well. Almost every dog I use. I don't really think there's any other way to train a dog besides positively, but certain dogs, once these habits are formed, it takes a left turn, and, you know, sometimes balanced training methods kind of have to fall in for certain specific dogs. How do you feel?
I feel that you start with balanced training.
Okay.
Right. So, but no matter how you train your dog, find something that works for you. Balanced training works for me. I'm considered a balanced trainer, even though that doesn't mean I don't give rewards. I give rewards, but I also help direct my dog to what I want them to do, help show them what I want them to do. So when I teach class, I tell people, we're going to show the dog what we want the dog to do. We're going to reward the dog for doing it.
Okay.
Right? Whether it's chasing a squirrel, not chasing a squirrel, all right, or coming to us, sit, place, whatever it is you're trying to teach your dog to do. Find a way to show the dog, find a way to reward the dog, find a way to let the dog know when he's doing it wrong.
Okay. So what are proper ways to let your dog know they're doing something right? Or like, how would you?
They're doing something right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the famous clicker. You can absolutely, the dog does it, click, reward the dog. Right?
Okay.
I prefer to use my voice. So I'll say yes when the dog does it, and I'll reward my dog. I'll say okay when my dog does it, and there's a different type of reward for when I say okay versus when I say yes when I reward my dog. Those are 3 simple ways to reward your dog. Some people may say okay and throw a ball when the dog does it. So whatever the dog loves. If you have a dog that just really loves food and doesn't really want to chase the ball, use the food.
So find their value
Find
toy
a
or
high
reward.
value toy or high value reward and give it to the dog.
Okay. So with that said, I actually, I don't know if you've thought about this yet, but I came up with this little nifty trick. It's going to save people some money, I think, over the stores. The stores may get mad at me, but I don't know if you've ever realized that like the Snapple cap is like the perfect clicker. Like, I realized that over the last week. You know, I've been spending like umpteen amounts of money on clickers over the years, and clicker training is just on my Snapple cap. $2.
I never really thought about using a Snapple cap.
True story.
But, all right.
So what are some of the things that you've run into so far as a trainer? Like some of the biggest issues with working with clients, or what are some of the clients that you have issues with?
I think the biggest issue is a client verbally praising a dog when the dog is doing something that they don't want done. They don't realize they're verbally praising the dog, but when a client goes, "Oh, that's okay," that is telling the dog, keep doing what you're doing. So sometimes the dog is scared and the person goes, "It's okay, it's all right." That's telling the dog, continue to be scared. Or the dog is trying to bite me and they go, "Oh, he's okay." No, it's not okay. So these are the big ones. Obviously, the biting me is the biggest one.
So moral of this point is be aware of what you're saying to your dog.
What you're
what
saying
times.
to your dog and what times. Absolutely. It's
Okay.
okay. Praise him or it's okay him when he's sitting there and acting nicely, right? Not when he's doing something that you don't want to see him do.
Gotcha.
So that tends to run the gamut.
All right. Another thing I guess I've been dealing with lately is people trying to introduce their dogs to babies or children. What is the best route, would you say?
Whose baby is it? Is
A
it
new
my baby and my dog,
So
or is it
2 clients have a baby.
They have a baby.
They have a dog. They're trying to figure out the best way to get the dog introduced to the baby now.
so they want to introduce the dog? How old's the baby?
Baby's just born. Coming
Okay.
home.
People, once again, this goes back to it's your baby and it's your dog. My infant children, just born, had nothing to do with my
Never.
dog. Was my dog still around? Yes, but it was under supervision at all times. There was no such thing as the dog is in the room with the baby and I'm watching TV drinking a beer.
Gotcha.
No.
So I'm going to have to switch us out here. We're going to have to take a quick intermission. It's time for another break, and when I return, David and I will discuss what we do for a living, canine training. We'll look at the issues that owners often frequently have when they have a dog. Please stay with us.
When you miss an episode of Q&A, you get hungry. When you get hungry, you don't know what to eat. When you don't know what to eat, you get irritable. When you get irritable, you miss questions on your exam. Don't miss questions on your exam. Watch Q&A on LaSalle TV.
Welcome back once again to Getting a Dog, What You Need to Know. I'm your host, Robert McLaughlin, and with me is David Owens. In our last segment, we were going to look at common issues that result in dogs being brought to shelters or being treated cruelly. We'll also talk about some training techniques that can help resolve those issues. So David, How do you feel about dogs being returned to shelters or being adopted from shelters, and
Well,
what do you usually see going on there?
most of the time, they're not returning to the shelter the perfect dog. In other words, the dogs had little to no training, or maybe the person even tried and just didn't find the right trainer. But I've worked with dogs from rescues and that people have gotten from rescues, and the dogs tend to have had no training. So I can understand the frustration if the person doesn't know where to go, who to call, and to find someone to help them. But if I have a problem doing something at home, I call someone. If my pipes break, I call a plumber. If I need to fix my truck, I go to the mechanic. So if you have a problem with your dog, call a trainer, right? And say, this is what I'm having, can you help me? I also tell them, when you talk to the trainer, have them come out and have them show you what they're going to do. And make sure you're comfortable with what they're going to do, how they're going to help you fix the challenges that you're having with your puppy, right? So that is now going to a shelter to get a dog is fine. But remember, when you take that dog home, you may call him your dog, but he's not your dog, right? The dog in his head is now at someone's home who's a stranger to him. He may be a happy dog running around, he may be a fearful dog, but he is not home. He doesn't know he's home, he doesn't know you, he doesn't know his surroundings. So be patient with the dog and start doing little things. There could be a little bit of training going on, and just slowly bring it up, because we train dogs so we can avoid problems. We don't want to see the problems. So when someone says, well, my dog has never done that, that's because you've done a good job. You've trained your dog so that you can never see him do that, right? So that's why we train dogs, so we don't have the problems that can come up in the future.
Gotcha. So I guess one of the things that I've noticed over time is a lot of the times when I go into homes, I'm seeing the owner's energy is being transferred into the dog. So if I have maybe like a disruptive household versus like a more calm and quiet household, the dog is a little disruptive versus more calm like certain owners. So
yeah, that's very common. Right?
So energy is a big factor in training.
Right. So, and people need to learn how to calm their dog and how to get their dog's energy up, because there are times for everything. But once again, it's going to go back to what we were talking about earlier. What kind of dog do you have, right? Do you have a full of energy dog who seems like everybody's shooting him up with sugar pills? Or do you have a dog who's laid back and maybe you need to get him a cup of coffee, right? So it really, really depends, and that's something to look at. So if you go to buy a dog and you talk to a breeder, if you go to a breeder, see the parents, see the mother, see the father, see what kind of dogs they actually are. And when I mean what kind of dogs they actually are, I don't mean the breed, I mean their personalities, their temperament, how they react to different things. All these things genetically get passed down to puppies. Yours will be a little bit different because he'll be a combination of mom and dad, but he'll be somewhere in there.
Okay. I've, over the last few months, I think I've seen a surge of dogs in, usually, what I usually see is pit bulls inside of rescues or bully breeds. I've been seeing a lot more huskies. I actually found an article that was attributed to the Game of Thrones series. Right. So since Game of Thrones came out, people really want huskies, but they're getting them and bringing them into, these high-rise penthouses and everything in the city, and they're destroying the houses. So now I'm seeing a big influx of huskies.
Right.
With that said, do you feel like there's any way, like realistically possible, to try to get these like closer to wolf breed lines into the houses? Or is it like the work that goes into that is almost unrealistic for a normal dog owner?
What's the household like? We're going to always go back to that. I mean, can they own a husky? Can they train a husky? Absolutely. Get professional help, train the dog, work with the dog. There are people who have huskies who do an excellent job with their dogs, who don't live in Alaska and run the Iditarod, who simply live at home and go out and have a good time with their dogs. But there are also people who don't have that kind of time, energy, or dedication to it, who shouldn't have the dog. So it really depends. You can pretty much have any dog you want, anywhere you want. What are you willing to do and give up to have that dog in this particular situation?
So sacrifice.
Right. So there's going to be a sacrifice of time. There's going to be a sacrifice of energy. Right. There's going to be a sacrifice of money. Right. So because of the different things going on, there's going to be grooming that's necessary. If you have a husky and you're taking your dog to the groomer, like everyone should be either going to a groomer or grooming their dogs every 6 weeks. That's roughly, talk to your local groomer about that, but that's roughly, right, every 6 weeks. But how much is this grooming going to cost for this husky who has this thick coat? Right, and then nails are going to need to be done. So there's a lot that goes into that keeping that dog healthy. And grooming's not always about just keeping the dog looking good. If the dog gets matted, he can have a skin infection on his skin because of the moisture that's stuck there. There are things that groomers will find out by going over the dog and say, oh, there's a lump here that needs to be checked out, and you've caught something early. So that's about,
Okay. So one of the things I really want to cover, I guess, before we run out of time here today is realistically, what can people do to kind of stop, the bad behaviors without, can bad behaviors be stopped by owners, or should you really just go ahead and just get a trainer when you're starting to see bad behaviors like destroying furniture, chewing up walls, eating drywall,
you should see a trainer
biting people
before you ever saw that behavior. When you get a dog, you should have a trainer. My dog's in a training program because I do sports. So there are other trainers there who look and say, David, maybe you need to adjust that or this and that. My dog is constantly being trained. Everyone's dog is constantly being trained. Now, you may be training it to do some bad things because you don't think you're training it, but your dog is constantly being trained. So your dog should be in a training program, and there are plenty of them out there.
Okay. All right, so we got about a minute left here, I think. I think one of the things that I really wanted to get across to people this time around was, just kind of like assess them, yourself as like a dog owner, like what do I look for? So, or, like how am I actually, not who I want to be, who I actually am, like I want to be as ripped as, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I want to be in the gym, but am I going to do that every day, all day, all night? No, absolutely not. So I'm not going to get the dog to match that lifestyle. So with that said, I think people kind of have to like do some self-assessing, and that's kind of uncomfortable for a lot of people. So offering the services, now I go with people to find the dog with them for the shelters. So do you think that's reasonable, or?
That may be great for them.
Okay, so
not for me.
I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. We're going to cover this later. We'll talk. All right, so unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank David Owens for joining me to discuss our passion, dogs. I hope you have learned something and that this is informational, helps you with your furry friend, and take care.